Okay.
We are now recording.
All right, just to give everyone a little background on Moms for Sight. Moms for Sight was founded in 2012 as an offshoot of our local Foundation Fighting Blindness chapter. We are a public nonprofit incorporated in the state of Florida and designated as a 501c3 charity by the IRS. In the beginning, our goal was to raise funds for sight-saving research. We have grown into an organization that also raises awareness, communicates with some of the leading research companies who are working on clinical trials all over the United States. And we also help support those families who are living with these inherited retinal diseases. If you are one of those families, you know how hard it can be to live with these diseases without a support network and people that understand the everyday struggles and achievements of those affected with these diseases and their family members. Most of you know each year Moms for Sight has a gala called Black Ties and Blindfolds. This year it was supposed to be on April 18th in Jacksonville, Florida at the Museum of Science and History. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we had to postpone until September. And then we realized September wasn't going to happen, so we went ahead and canceled altogether and made this event virtual. So this is our first virtual, so please excuse us for any issues we may have along the way. We may have a few stumbles here and there. We just didn't want to go a year without being able to get together and raise awareness and celebrate the great accomplishments made toward sight-saving, toward treating and curing inherited retinal diseases. The good news about a virtual conference is you didn't have to get dressed up, you didn't have to drive somewhere, you didn't have to, a lot of people who might be from out of town normally can't come because of the distance, so now you can log in. So hopefully we're reaching, and I do see a few names that are new to me, so hopefully we are reaching a few people that we haven't been able to reach before, which is great. Although I do miss the opportunity, I use that time of year every year to buy a little black dress, and this year I didn't get to buy a black dress, so that's a little sad. Our board of directors consists of mothers of affected children, as well as people who truly care about our cause. At this time, I want to introduce you to them, and I'll go first. I'm the executive director, Lisa Pleasance, and my family is affected with X-linked juvenile retinoschisis. I have two brothers, a cousin, and a son who is affected, the son who's moderating this event today, and three nieces who could be carriers. Another board member is Susie Ford. Susie, you just want to give us a wave there? Okay. Judy Ludlam. She's there somewhere. Lance Pleasance is actually my husband, and he's on the board because he carries a lot of heavy things around for us. Bobby Moore, she might be with Susie, I'm not sure. Is she around?
She's not feeling well.
Okay. And then we've got Kelly Pate, who's one of our fairly new board members, along with Tina Eckler, who is our newest, one of our two newest board members, and she is honestly the most active board member since we started. She has done a lot to raise awareness and funds for sight-saving research. And then we have Michael Wright, who's also new, and we'll hear a little bit more straight from him when we go on, because he's also a sponsor. So in no particular order, I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to our sponsors. The first platinum sponsor we're going to talk about is AGTC, or Applied Genetics Technology Corporation. This is the fourth year AGTC has sponsored Black Ties and Blindfolds. We thank them very much for that. But most of all, we thank them for all the work they do to treat and cure inherited retinal diseases. And Jill or Antoinette, I don't know if you wanted to say anything before we switch to the video.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate the opportunity. As you said, AGTC is we're a clinical stage biotech company developing genetic therapies for people with rare and inherited ophthalmologic, otologic, and CNS diseases, in fact. Our initial focus, as you know, is ophthalmology. We're leveraging our best-in-class investigational technology platform to improve vision for patients with inherited retinal diseases. We're focusing right now on X-linked retinitis pigmentosa and achromatopsia, in which we have active clinical trials for both of those conditions. I sent that video to you for a couple of reasons. One is that it highlights the work that we're doing, but more importantly, our commitment to patients. And by participating in educational events like this, we gain insights from individuals about how, the challenges they have with their condition, the family members and how they're dealing with it as well. And so I wanted to show you a portion of a video that was taken at our R&D day, where we had two individuals, one with X-linked retinitis pigmentosa and one with achromatopsia, talk about their condition, talk about how valuable a clinical trial may be for them, and importantly, what the future may hold for them. So without taking any further time, I'm thrilled to have Brendan launch that video for us. Looks like you might be having a little trouble with that, Brendan.
Would you consider being a part of a gene therapy clinical trial if you were eligible, or would you consider doing gene therapy? And then what would you consider to be the minimum amount to deem it a success for you?
Absolutely, I would. I feel like for the first time, there is a real chance that my sight could be changed, and that gene therapy is the leading in this science right now. I would partake, and I'm very excited to see what's happening in the field. And for me, the minimum change would be knowing that the disease could be slowed down or halted. If it could stop exactly where it is, I mean, I said I've lost 85% of my vision, but I'm able to do what I love. I'm able to paint and create and live a really wonderful life. And if I knew today that there was a chance that I wasn't going to face more vision loss or even lose all of my sight, and that I could keep doing what I love for the rest of my life, that would give me so much hope. It would give me a new lease on life.
Thanks, Brendan. Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and highlight what we hope will be an improvement in vision in many patients with inherited retinal disorders in the future.
Thank you for everything you're doing, Jill. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Lisa.
So the next platinum sponsor we're going to talk about is Janssen. They are new to Black Ties and Blindfolds this year. They want to create a future where diseases are things of the past. They are the pharmaceutical companies of Johnson & Johnson working tirelessly to make that future a reality for patients everywhere by fighting sickness with science, improving access with ingenuity, and healing hopelessness with the heart. And yes, that's total plagiarism from their website, sorry. Stephanie Duffy, I think that you're online as well. Did you want to say anything before we launch your video?
Sure, absolutely. And I apologize for not being on video. I am chasing around my 3.5-year-old and 1.5-year-old today. So I didn't want to torture anyone on the line with the scene that's unfolding here, but really appreciate the opportunity for Moms for Sight, Lisa and Susie, for all of your great efforts. Certainly an honor to Kristen to honor you and the great work that you're doing on behalf of your foundation. But similar to what Jill was just mentioning, Janssen, as you all know, is a division of Johnson & Johnson. We're proud to be in the space now of helping to advance treatments in the retinal category. And we're also hoping that our broad footprint, along with what Jill mentioned with retinitis pigmentosa and achromatopsia, will continue onward as we're innovating and developing new treatments in the space to help those impacted by the conditions mentioned, as well as their families. So we certainly feel very privileged and honored to be part of this group, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to join today. So thank you again, everyone, and have a great rest of the conference.
Hi, I'm Jim List, Global Head of the Cardiovascular Metabolism and Retina team at Janssen. I have the privilege of sharing how we're improving the lives of millions of people impacted by eye diseases. Today, I'll review why we're focused in this space and our overall strategy. Janssen is the pharmaceutical arm of Johnson & Johnson, and we are proud to be a part of the broadest and most diversified healthcare company. Johnson & Johnson has long-standing leadership in both consumer and surgical devices through J&J Vision. Janssen's entry into eye disease only extends our commitment to support patients living with diseases of the eye. At Janssen, patient needs set the priorities. We have a legacy of entering spaces with innovations that transform lives. From young children to those young at heart, our newest commitment to eye disease is no exception. We believe Janssen's deep experience and Johnson & Johnson's broad ophthalmic footprint makes us well-positioned to deliver on our mission, which is to restore and preserve vision, both for the millions of patients affected by common eye diseases and for those with rare inherited retinal diseases. Let's take a moment to look at the enormous and wide-reaching impact that eye disease can have. More than 350 million people globally have some form of visual impairment or blindness associated with a retinal disorder, and the economic burden to healthcare systems is even more staggering. That's why we've taken on developing transformational therapies for eye disease and are rapidly amassing new capabilities and partnerships, such as retaining some of the world's great retina talent, advancing our AAV manufacturing technology, entering into strategic collaborations and forming critical partnerships with leading eye institutions. And we now have a dedicated discovery site in San Francisco to advance our early gene therapy programs, as well as discover new targets for more common eye diseases. We've made excellent progress, and we're far from finished. XLRP is an inherited retinal disease impacting males. It's typically diagnosed in children and young adults and begins in adolescence with night blindness and loss of peripheral vision. As seen here, there's a relentless progressive constriction of the field of vision that eventually leads to blindness, and there are no approved treatments, which is our motivation, what inspires us to keep discovering and developing innovations. At Janssen, we are proud of the progress we've made to date and will continue to build and strengthen our capabilities in eye diseases by attracting world-class talent, expertise, and partnerships, and live into our team's mission to bring new transformational solutions to patients. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Stephanie, for that, and we appreciate your sponsorship as well. And for AGTC, for Janssen, and for Exit Inspired Realty, who I'm about to introduce, so be patient 1 more minute for that. I just want to let you know that since this event didn't quite turn out the way our events are normally done, that you guys are platinum sponsors for the entire year until the next Black Ties and Blindfolds. So we will make sure to continue to keep you as sponsors on our page as long as you're okay with that, and use you in different things that we send out to the public, so that hopefully more people can support your efforts and we can raise more awareness. Our third platinum sponsor is Exit Inspired Realty. And since our gold level sponsor this year is Michael Wright from Exit Inspired Realty, we're going to ask that he say a few words on behalf of both. Michael?
Hello. So excited to be here. You know, Susie Ford was a big inspiration to a lot of people that we work with, and she does such a good job of explaining what y'all do and what kind of an impact. You know, I honestly, personally didn't know a whole lot about it, and she's really opened my eyes. And as a brokerage and and as a real estate agent and a team with Susie, we have tried to tailor ourselves to your cause and your mission, providing, Susie will provide services, and I'm sure she'll talk about that, but she knows firsthand, what it takes in order for somebody with any kind of an eye disease in order to find the right home. And so, I'm sure she'll talk about that, but we just want to show our support for y'all. And anytime anything comes our way, right now we're already partnered all the way up to exit corporate. So any dollar, it's matched dollar for dollar up to $10,000. And every year we'll continue to do that. Every time something comes our way, we're going to keep giving to your cause, and we care about all of you. So love y'all.
Aw, thank you, Michael. We really appreciate it. Susie, I don't know if you want to say a thank you as well.
Oh, yeah, thank you. The spirit of exit is what Michael introduced us to. It is from the corporate level, and I really appreciate your passion and how caring you are. Thank you.
Oh,
I'm gonna get all emotional, so I'm gonna stop.
okay, so next up, we have Dr. Sandeep Grover. He is a professor at the University of Florida College of Medicine, Jacksonville Department of Ophthalmology. He is well known and loved, and when I say loved, truly loved here in Jacksonville, Florida, and the whole surrounding area. He has a unique ability to describe these rare, complicated diseases in a way that everyone can understand them. People come from all over the Southeast to see him. I know it took Brendan and myself a few doctors until we found him. And once we found him, we knew we'd found a home in a doctor and a community. So we really love Dr. Grover, and Dr. Grover, you're up next.
Hi there, everyone. Let me share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I think I was spotlighting his video, or like his camera, but I think it should be working now.
Okay, let's go back again. Now? No?
Brendan, did you hand it over to him?
Yeah, he should have the ability to share his screen.
Does he have to click on share screen?
Yes.
Yeah, I am doing that. I think it is still on your screen, Brendan.
Okay, hold on.
Can you stop sharing yours, Brendan?
I'm not sharing my screen, I don't think.
I see your name up there.
Well, that's just because I'm talking.
Okay.
Okay, I got it now.
Okay, cool.
There we go.
Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Let's see. So thank you very much, Lisa and Susie. Of course, as you said, this black ties and blindfold event, I always look forward to it. But this year, unfortunately, it's not physically there, but at least we are doing it on Zoom. So thank you again for inviting me to be here with you all. I just want to make sure I disclose I have no financial interest in any of this. So in the past, I've been doing inherited diseases since 1994. So in the past, the statements that have come up are like, there's no treatment for these conditions, so no need to see an eye doctor. Unfortunately, I get those remarks from patients, though even nowadays, they have been told that there is no treatment, so why see an eye doctor? Or this and this condition is a blinding disease, retinitis pigmentosa, Stargardt disease, name any of the inherited retinal diseases, it's called a blinding disease. Or it is useless to do gene testing. So those are some of the remarks that used to come up in the past. But the research done in the past has really helped define the present. And of course, it takes time. So for example, the only FDA-approved gene therapy for a condition called Leber congenital amaurosis, and we'll come to that in a moment, was approved in late 2017. And last night I wanted to go back and see, well, when were the first mutations in RP and LCA? When were they described? And I came across these 3 papers, and one of them was this. And I remember that I was a co-author on this paper that described the mutations in RPE65 gene in 1998. So you can see it took almost 20 years for the treatment to come out for that particular gene mutation. Clinicaltrials.gov, I think, is a great site where anyone can enter the name of the condition, and you can see how many clinical trials are ongoing. There is a caveat that anything that goes on clinicaltrials.gov does not mean that it has been approved by FDA. Any trial that is done can be entered in clinicaltrials.gov. So you have to be a little bit judicious about what that trial is. So yesterday I put the word retinal degeneration in clinicaltrials.gov and found that there are 1,890 studies which are registered for retinal degenerations. Then I narrowed the search and said retinal degeneration in USA, and there were 837 studies that are ongoing or have been done in the past, which are registered. So what I'm going to do today is because there's a mixed audience, there are people who have these inherited diseases or are family members, and there are some people who may not have any idea about what these conditions are, because you talk about diabetes and breast cancer and everyone knows what it is. But you talk about Stargardt disease, retinoschisis, and people look at you as if saying, what is that condition? So I'm going to give a brief overview of the normal structure first, before we go into the abnormal inherited retinal dystrophies. There are some treatment options, although as you know, there are not too many treatment options, but still there are important things to consider, and we'll go through those. And we'll talk about treatment trials, although it's tough to go into each specific treatment trial in this short time. But I just wanted to give you an overview of what treatment trials are and how to look into it as to what it is for you. So the eye, as I always say, is like a camera. Has a lens in front which focuses the picture onto the back of the eye where the retina is located. And if you actually do a histology of the retina, that small area right at the back, you can get a picture like this, which if you turn it around, so let me orient you. The top of the slide is the inside of the eyeball, and the bottom of the slide is the back of the eyeball. And the retina has 10 layers, so that's what you're looking at. The retina rests upon a bed of cells, which is called RPE cells, or retinal pigment epithelium cells. Don't confuse that with RP. It's got nothing to do with retinitis pigmentosa. So, and RP, retinitis pigmentosa, is not retinal pigment epithelium. So, although a lot of people get confused about that. So, these are the 3 layers, and these are very closely associated with each other. So if one condition, the choroid, is affected, then the subsequent areas of the RPE and the photoreceptors are also affected. They degenerate as well. And if there's a condition that affects the photoreceptors, like retinitis pigmentosa, then the adjoining RPE and choroid also degenerate over time. So when light hits the eye, any image that you are seeing, the light is reflected from that object, comes into the eye, travels through the whole retina, all the 9 layers, and then comes to the photoreceptors, which are rods and cones, which are the sensitive cells that pick up the light. These are the antennas that pick up the light. And then there's a lot of chemical reaction there. The chemical reaction changes into electrical impulse, which travels back through the various layers of the retina, and then goes out through the optic nerve to the brain, where the picture is kind of projected in the back part of the brain. So let's look at the rods and the cones. So the rods and cones are the photoreceptors. The rods, there are about 120 million rods in each eye. And these are the cells that help us to see at night. And they also help us to see to the side, or the peripheral vision also is from the rods. The cones are about 5 to 7 million, and they are responsible for the center vision, the color vision, and they are mainly concentrated in the center of the retina, the macula. If you look at a particular structure of photoreceptor, whether it's a rod or cone, so again, remember this, the bottom part is where the RPE cells would be. So it's made up of, called outer segment, which is basically a series of discs or a series of quarters, if you want to look at it that way. So fresh discs are being produced by the nucleus of the photoreceptors, and the last disc, as you see, which is the oldest, they slowly are eaten up by the RPE cells, and that cycling keeps going on every day. If you blow up that last outer disc we talked about, so you can see that this one is going away, whereas this one is the next one, and that is catching the light. There is a series of cascade of chemical reactions that are ongoing. And this is that outer segment, and this is the RPE cells. So I show the two cells together. And you can see that when light hits rhodopsin, it kind of changes into several chemicals, and it requires various proteins and enzymes at different steps, and then goes through this process, and then it is recycled again to take the next ray of light. So that process continues, and you can see RPE65 is the gene that causes Leber congenital amaurosis. So mutations in this gene does not allow that step to happen. So either the quality of that protein is not good, or it is not being produced in the right amount. And that is why this step does not happen properly. That's why slowly the degeneration takes place. So this recycling process keeps happening throughout the day. And we thought human beings invented recycling. So this is the back of the eye, the retina that we talked about. So when I look inside the eye, this is what I look at. And this was the reason why I went into ophthalmology 33 years back. When I looked at this retina for the first time, I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So you can see the retina here, the yellow round structure you see is the optic nerve through which all the nerves, they go out to the brain. And an area which is a dark area right there, that is called the macula. So in this whole retina, that center part, the macula, is the only part that can give us 20/20 vision. So if something happens to that central area, the vision goes down, and it cannot be corrected with glasses or contact lenses, because if the film of the camera is not working, putting a new lens in front of the camera is not going to change the quality of the picture. So let's look at some of these conditions. Macular degeneration, which is a huge term, it encompasses so many things. I kind of divide macular degeneration into two big categories. One is the age-related macular degeneration, which usually happens after age 60, 65. And then anything that happens before, even in early childhood or early adulthood, those are called juvenile onset macular dystrophies. And we'll come to these in a moment. And then there is another category of conditions, which is the night blinding disorders. Again, there are many more in this, but we will talk about these four conditions. So coming back to the macular degeneration, the age-related kind, there are two kinds, dry and wet. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this. Macular degeneration term is much more common than others. So someone with dry macular degeneration, don't be confused. This is the left eye. The normal retina that I showed you was the right eye. So the optic nerve and the macula, they switch positions. So what you can see is a scar in the macular area. And that is the reason the vision slowly goes down as the size of the scar keeps progressing. Slowly the vision will go down and down. Remember the RPE cells, which was a strong barrier between the choroid, the blood vessels, and the retina. So in macular degeneration, when that scar forms, there is thinning of the RPE cells. And when that barrier breaks down, 10% of the times, blood vessels can grow in from the choroid into the retina and leak fluid or leak blood. So you see there is blood in the macular area, and that is wet macular degeneration then. And with wet macular degeneration, the vision goes down almost suddenly and quite a bit. Treatment for age-related macular degeneration. Well, for the dry kind, the vitamins that are touted for dry AMD, they are good for certain category of patients, but not in every patient. And for the wet kind, although laser treatment was the only treatment available till about 2006 or 2007, it has limited use nowadays for wet macular degeneration. But more importantly, since 2007, all these injections, all these medications have come in, and they are injected into the eye through the white part of the eye, of course, after numbing the eye, through the white part of the eye, and it kind of goes into that jelly, the vitreous. That's why it's called intravitreal injection. And the medication kind of sits right next to the retina where it is needed. Not going into the details, I just want to show you the pipeline here for dry macular degeneration. There are so many things that are being worked on as at different stages. Some are still in the pre-concept phase, some are in the lab phase, some are in the animal study phase, and some of them are being planned for clinical treatment trials. And this is a pipeline for the wet macular degeneration. So now moving on to the juvenile onset macular dystrophies. We'll talk about three of those: cone rod dystrophy, Stargardt disease, juvenile X-linked retinoschisis. Stargardt disease is the most common juvenile onset macular dystrophy. Now these three conditions may look like this. So if you look at these three pictures, they kind of look alike, but there are three different conditions. So let's look at them. So this one, again, you see, this is a more magnified view. So I'm just focused on that center part. So you see the optic nerve and the macula. We don't show the rest of the peripheral retina. So you see a scar in the center part in the macula. And after doing some testing like OCT or ERG testing, you can determine that this is cone dystrophy or cone rod dystrophy. And in cone dystrophy, again, because cones are affected first, what will happen? The center vision will be affected, the color vision will be affected, and these people are sensitive to light. So if you see that triad of decreased center vision, decreased color vision, and sensitivity to light, that's more or less cone dystrophy. Now, since both Stephanie and Jill talked about achromatopsia, I can kind of comment on that. So achromatopsia is almost like cone dystrophy, except most of the time we don't see a scar in the macular area. The difference is that cone dystrophy is a degeneration. So the children are born with normal cones, but the mutation is working since birth, and it takes time before the degeneration happens. Whereas in achromatopsia, the cones are abnormal to begin with. They're just not hooked up properly. And so that is kind of it comes in this category. Many genes have been identified that cause cone rod dystrophy, and these are some of the important ones or the more common ones that have been identified for this. Next is Stargardt disease. Again, you see the scar in the macular area, but a subtle finding is that you see a ring of flecks or yellow kind of deposits around the scar. And that kind of puts it into the category of Stargardt disease. And of course, we can do the testing and gene testing to figure out whether it is Stargardt or not. So for Stargardt disease, the main gene that has been identified is ABCA4, although there is a percentage of Stargardt disease patients where gene mutations have been found in the ELOVL4 gene as well, but still ABCA4 is the main gene. Juvenile X-linked retinoschisis. So as the name suggests, it is X-linked, first of all, so it happens in males, and women are carriers. It starts early, so it's juvenile. And then retinoschisis meaning splitting of the retina. So mainly in the center, in the macula, the retina splits. We can see that on an OCT test where you can see the splitting of the retina. And so the center vision is affected in retinoschisis. 50% of people with retinoschisis can have peripheral retinoschisis as well. And then the side vision can be affected too, if they have it. If they don't, then the peripheral vision is not affected. The only gene that has been linked with X-linked retinoschisis is the RS1 gene. Next, moving on to some night blinding disorders. Let's look at retinitis pigmentosa. So I showed you this normal retina. This is how it looks. And in retinitis pigmentosa, as the name suggests, there is pigments. So you can see the so-called bone spicule pigments in the retina. Most of the time, these are peripheral and the center macula looks good. So it's the opposite of cone dystrophy. So another name for retinitis pigmentosa is rod cone dystrophy, meaning rods are affected first, cones are affected later on. So that is the reason why people who have retinitis pigmentosa first notice a problem with night vision or adapting to the dark. When they come from a lighted area to a dark area, they take more time to adapt than someone who has a normal retina. And then also it affects the peripheral field to varying degrees, because RP is not one disease, it's a spectrum of conditions. And the visual field can vary as much as, if this is the normal field, people can have tunnel visual field in advanced retinitis pigmentosa. Not every person with RP will end up with a tunnel field. Important to understand that. More than 60 genes have been described for RP, and these are some of the common ones. It has both all the autosomal recessive, autosomal dominant, as well as the X-linked. Usher syndrome. So syndrome usually means there is more than one thing going on. So Usher syndrome is retinitis pigmentosa plus deafness from birth. And so based upon that, there are three different types. Type 1 and type 2 are more common. Type 1, where the deafness is severe, and so they pretty much cannot hear, so that the speech does not develop properly, and there is balance problems. Type 2 is less severe, where there is moderate hearing loss. They do have some kind of a speech, and they usually do not have balance problems. Type 3 has been described, and it's kind of controversial, but there is delayed hearing loss, usually in early childhood or early adulthood. So that's Usher syndrome. And some of the genes that have been associated with Usher syndrome are shown here. Labor congenital amaurosis, or LCA, is a condition where it hits the retina very early on in life. So pretty much children are born with this night blinding disease, and because it starts from birth, so that is why they're not able to focus properly. So the brain is not able to find a focus. That's why they develop a nystagmus, which is a fine movement of the eye. And the vision is poor to begin with, right from the beginning. And they come in various forms as well. And a lot of times when we look at children or infants, they have the nystagmus. You look at the retina can look normal. So this is very well established that if you see an infant who has nystagmus and the retina looks normal, we do an ERG test or electroretinogram to look at that electricity that comes off from the rods and cones. And usually with the LCA, it's kind of a non-recordable ERG, and that is diagnostic. And again, I'm telling you the clinical features of how to diagnose LCA. Of course, with gene testing, now you can try to find out more accurately whether someone has LCA. More than 30, I think it's 34 genes that have been described so far. These are the more common ones. And you can see RPE65 is one of them. Choroideremia is another disease where it affects the night vision and peripheral vision. So this is more where it affects the choroid and then the photoreceptors. So here, the macula looks pretty good, and the vision is usually 20/20 in choroideremia, almost up to age 50 or so. And then the center vision can be affected as well. But you can see the rest of it sometimes can be confused with the retinitis pigmentosa. If there are not too many pigments in this case, it can be confused with retinitis pigmentosa, the X-linked retinitis pigmentosa. But the tests can help to determine whether it is RP or choroideremia. And the only gene that is associated with choroideremia is the CHN gene. So that was kind of an overview of the different macular dystrophies and the night blinding disorders. And these are the more common ones. There are other rare ones too, which I did not touch upon. This is just to show you identifying and mapping the genes, although it says started in 1980, but you can see it didn't really start picking up until the early 90s. And you can see by 2018, there are more than 250 genes that have been identified and mapped. Just to give you an idea of how it has grown over the years. And this is just to show you the same picture that I showed you. So if you look at just the RPE, the photoreceptors, the outer layers, there are so many genes, and so different genes act at different levels, kind of slowing down the proteins in different areas and affecting different parts of the cycle that it affects. Not going into the details of treatment options for IRDs. So these are actually not treatment options, but the trials or the research that is going on is broadly classified into like 3 different kinds. One is gene therapy. The other is more like stem cell therapy, and then the retinal prosthesis. So if you look at this, mostly if you see that area that shows retinal disease progression. So early on, when the retina has not degenerated too much, the gene therapies have a better chance of working because you're trying to replace the gene that is deficient or trying to replace the protein in the retina that is deficient, hoping that it will start working and at least halt the disease or even improve it. And then as you go on, you have stem cell therapies where basically it does not depend upon what gene is deficient, but the stem cell is trying to grow either the rods and cones or the RPE cells from different kinds of cells. Not only the embryonic stem cells, but different kinds of cells. It can be harvested from different areas. And then of course, if the disease has progressed and is very advanced, then you have retinal prosthesis. So just to name a few molecular therapies, there are DNA therapies, there is RNA therapies, compound therapies, and a lot of these, mostly right now, most of these are given as a subretinal injection, which means they need surgery where the retina surgeon goes into the eye. Well, the surgeon doesn't go into the eye, sorry. But what they do is they basically inject the gene or the virus under the retina. So that is where this is injected. Now, there are certain trials that are being planned and happening where intravitreal injections can be given. So you don't have to go under it. You don't need surgery, but just an injection, just like the macular degeneration injections. I know AGTC is one of them. And so that would be really a good way to inject because it's much more much less invasive than having a retina surgery and doing an injection under the retina. Of course, there are challenges for all these treatments because, as I told you, RP is not one disease, it's a spectrum. And there are a number of genes that cause the same condition. And then there are a number of conditions that is caused by the same gene. So what we are going to right now is, especially for gene therapy, is, doesn't matter what the fundus looks like, what the retina looks like, whether we call it Stargardt, we call it cone rod. If we are going to develop a treatment for, let's say, any of these genes, then whether it is Stargardt or cone rod dystrophy, everyone will benefit from that. Let's say ABCA4 gene. Then the size of the gene and the vector is important because you have to pick the vector meaning the instrument or the vehicle that takes the gene into the eye, which is usually a virus. So if the size of the gene is too big, then you have to find a different kind of vector. Whereas if it is small, like a AAV, the one that causes common cold, the one that was approved for RPE65 will do good. And again, the cost of the research trials and FDA approval, all those are challenges. Then you have the stem cell based therapies, different ways to harvest the stem cells. And then you have retinal prosthetic implants, different kinds. So as the doctors tell the patients that what is the use of going to the doctor if there's no treatment, even the patients sometimes think the same way, that if there's no treatment, why should I go to the doctor annually or 6 monthly? Because there are many reasons for that. So when I see patients, I look for other problems too, because yes, someone may have some inherited retinal disease. That does not mean they cannot have glaucoma. That does not mean they cannot develop cataracts. And unfortunately, I find that there are not a lot, but quite a few people who have retinitis pigmentosa and it affects their sight vision, but they have glaucoma too, and no one is treating for that. And they may be losing more sight vision from glaucoma than retinitis pigmentosa, and we keep thinking that it is the RP that is causing the visual loss. So a lot of times I will treat the glaucoma, even if there is a little bit hint of glaucoma, I rather treat them for glaucoma and they don't have it than not treat them and they go blind with glaucoma rather than RP. Cataracts can dim the vision further. So when there is cataract enough, excuse me, that we can do surgery on it, we can at least improve some of the vision. Obviously, we cannot bring the patient back to 20/20 if it is affected with some other condition, but at least improve somewhat. Diabetic retinopathy can also, if someone is diabetic as well, they may have diabetic retinopathy and can have severe diabetic retinopathy. So at least that needs to be treated as well. They may have a change in prescription like anyone else. So that needs to be taken care of. Whenever the vision goes down below 20/40, 20/50, I always think about low vision evaluation. We have an excellent low vision specialist in Jacksonville, Dr. Jordan, and I will send patients to her or to Amy at the Florida, what is it called? The services for the blind. Through them, they can go to Amy as well. So low vision evaluation is important, and a lot of patients benefit from that. At least they can read, if nothing else. There comes a time when I talk about use of cane as well as guide dog, and that is again important for mobility. We discuss research and any upcoming treatment trials. And of course, we talk about genetic testing. So in the last few years, there has been an increased role of genetic testing, and even American Academy of Ophthalmology has recommended that you can offer genetic testing in known patients with IRDs. Always use a CLIA certified lab, not any lab. Genetic counseling is important, which can be either provided by the physician or genetic counselor, and we provide the report to the patient. Some of the places we have heard about is the My Retina Tracker, which is the Foundation Fighting Blindness, and they have teamed up with Blueprint Genetics and the counseling services, the Informed DNA. And so they are right now doing genetic testing for free, and I have sent a lot of samples to them. Spark Therapeutics and Invitae are also doing the gene test for free, and I utilize their service as well. And then there are these other labs that can also do the gene testing, but usually that's for a certain cost. You have to remember that genetic testing is not foolproof. You have to interpret the results very carefully. Sometimes, even though there may be mutations in the gene, it's not necessary that that is really the mutation that is causing the disease. So the interpretation has to be made very carefully. That's why you need a genetic counselor or a physician who is well versed with these interpretations. Just having a genetic mutation does not mean that that is the disease-causing mutation, because there are other mutations that we all have as human beings which are not disease-causing. And lastly, we come to clinical trials. And FDA has a process where there is discovery and development first in the lab. Then you have animal research, which is called the preclinical research. And then you have human research, which is the clinical trials. Now, in clinical trials, the phase 1 trial just tests for, is the drug or is whatever is to be tested, is it safe? That's all. So very few patients who have, let's say, poor vision already to begin with are tested to make sure whether it is safe or not. Of course, after trying in animals. Then the phase 2 comes where we say, is the medication effective? It has been found to be safe, but is it effective? And then so you enroll, like, let's say, a few hundred patients and get to phase 2. And then phase 3 says, is it significantly effective? So then you have two groups. One is a control group, one is a treatment group, and you enroll thousands of patients. So that becomes phase 3. Now, when I talk about the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, that is usually for diseases that have a lot of patients, like diabetes. The millions of diabetics, so you can easily get a few thousand patients for trials. Now let's come to some of the terminology. And the first one is orphan disease. So as I was saying, that you can get a lot of patients for diabetes, breast cancer, or hypertension, or something like that. But FDA realizes that there are some conditions, like most of the inherited retinal diseases, where there are only less than 200,000 patients in US. And those are designated as orphan disease. So the sponsors, whoever is sponsoring the trial, are allowed to kind of mix like phase 1, phase 2, or phase 2, phase 3, so that they don't have to enroll thousands of patients. They can enroll even less than 100 patients and still go through it. Placebo is a substance that has no therapeutic effect or toxicity and can be used as a control for the treatment group. Then there are open label versus blind studies. So open label means the physician knows whether the patient is getting the placebo or the actual treatment. The patient also knows whether they're getting the treatment or not. The blind study can be, so one of them or both of them are blind. So single blind versus double blind, which means that the patient doesn't know whether they're getting the sham or the actual treatment, and the physician also does not know. Then there are randomized studies where the randomization is taking place. So the physician does not decide who gets the treatment and who does not. It's randomized and the physician just performs the thing. There are dose escalation studies, usually in the phase 1, or sometimes in phase 2, is you're escalating the dose. So there are, let's say, 3 patients enrolled with the low dose, and you look for toxicity. And if there's no toxicity, then the next 3 patients are enrolled in a higher dose. And again, if there's no toxicity, then the next 3 patients are enrolled maybe with a slightly higher dose. So you keep doing that till you reach the maximal tolerated dose. And then you have the dose expansion studies where you use that maximum tolerated dose and do the rest of the trial. So those are some of the terms that you will hear about. And so I just bring up an example here. So if you go to that clinicaltrials.gov, and let's say what I did was I said RPGR with retinitis pigmentosa, and it says that 6 trials are there. So I pulled up this one here. So that shows the sponsor, and then it will show you the study description. What is the study all about? And then the study design. And you can see they will enroll 63 patients. They'll be randomized, and there'll be part 1, part 2. Part 1 is unmasked, part 2 is masked. And this is the dose escalation, which is phase 1, and then the dose expansion study for X-linked retinitis pigmentosa. So it becomes easy for you to understand what they're talking about. You go down and it talks about outcome measures. So there are primary outcome measures and secondary. That means when these patients are enrolled, what will we be measuring at the end point? Are we measuring vision? Are we measuring fields? Are we measuring ERG? Are we measuring patient surveys, toxicity? All those things are endpoints. Go further, there is eligibility criteria. So which patients are eligible for the trial? Usually the sponsor will decide the inclusion criteria and the exclusion criteria. So the patients with this much field, this much vision, this age group, and this much ERG are going to be enrolled in the study. Those are the inclusion criteria. The exclusion is could be anything. So glaucoma and all that will be excluded from the study, obviously. And then towards the end, it tells you about the contacts and locations. Foundation Fighting Blindness is a good place where you can look at the pipeline. So these are the molecular proteins that are being, the treatment trials that are there. I'm not sure whether everything is listed or just the trials that the Foundation Fighting Blindness has helped to support them in some way or the other. Only those are listed. But you can see there are so many trials that are in different phases. Then there are cell-based therapies, and these are the gene therapies. So I remember I did this one talk many years back in Jacksonville, and I started with this, are we there yet? And we are still, we have advanced a lot, but still lots to go. And at UF Health, we are actually, I am approved for a trial for dry macular degeneration with NGM Pharmaceuticals. It should be starting in a couple of months. We have a retinitis pigmentosa trial, which is exciting because it is actually a pill that has to be taken, and it's a 4-year study. We are still planning that with Johns Hopkins, and that's called the NAC Attack trial. And hopefully that will start next year, early next year, and we will be part of that trial as well. And with the AGTC, we are looking at hopefully being a site for the X-linked RP. We're still in the early phases of determining that. Apart from that, I do a lot of studies with diabetic retinopathy as well. Congratulations, Kristen, for the Visionary Award this year. Thanks AGTC and Janssen and Exit for supporting Moms for Sight. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grover. I love that eye chart. That's great. So now all of us can go out and tell the world about inherited retinal diseases to pretty good detail because Dr. Grover's so good at explaining it. So we really appreciate it. And good luck with the clinical trials you're about to have at UF. That's awesome. Jill, make sure he gets that one for X-linked retinitis pigmentosa.
Jill has been instrumental in that.
Oh, good.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so next up, I want to introduce to you our Visionary Award winner. As Dr. Grover said, it's Kristen Smedley. And just a little background on her and how I found her. I was introduced to her through one of our sponsors, and I did a lot of research on her, and I saw some of the stuff she did, and I'm amazed. She has 2 sons affected with Leber congenital amaurosis. She has raised awareness more than any other mom I think I know out there. She's written a book called Thriving Blind, and she took to the stage for TEDx. Hopefully all of you have had a chance to look at her YouTube video of the TEDx talk she gave. It's pretty great. She hosts events on the internet and travels the country telling people how they can succeed without sight. We are honored to have her as our 2020 Visionary recipient. So please help me in welcoming Kristen Smedley.
Oh, thanks so much for that. I really am going to have to play back that recording for my kids because we've been together in the same house for how many months, and I don't know that they think I'm all that lovely every single day. But thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for, I am so excited that you guys still had this event because so many things are getting canceled, as we all know. And I was sitting here as Dr. Grover was talking and Jill was talking and some other folks. It just fuels me to be together with you all, even though we're not together, because as we all know, this work is excruciating sometimes. You feel like you're in a vacuum sometimes, and especially in quarantine like this. So I am so grateful that you're still putting this on, and all the people that came into the Zoom room in the middle of a Saturday. I know that everybody is going in 75 different directions in their own house still. So I am so appreciative. And I am so appreciative of the work of Moms for Sight and Janssen and AGTC and everybody that's here, because this field has exploded in recent years and it is just extraordinary. But I have to give you a little disclaimer here. I always say I am a doctor of nothing. I do not have an advanced degree. I don't really have any business talking about some of the stuff I talk about, other than I have a very huge stake in the game ×2, as you heard with my 2 boys. But I also want to tell you all that if what you hear from me in the next several minutes, and I'll try to trim it down so you can get to the super fun stuff of the auction, if you feel like there is stuff that you want to do and dreams that you have and you just don't think you have it in you, I am here. If you learn nothing else from me today, I am here to tell you that if I can do the stuff that I'm about to talk about and the stuff that you just heard about me, that brief synopsis, if I can do this from where I began, you can literally do anything that you're dreaming of. Because for me, I don't know about you guys, but I was one of those people that my whole life until, my 20s, and when my world kind of went upside down and inside out, my life was pretty, I'm a planner. I'm a Virgo, which may have something to do with it. I went through 12 years of Catholic school. So, you had to make your list. I learned making lists and making boxes and checking them off. And I was really good at that. I set goals, I did the work, I achieved, and I went on to the next thing. And that's kind of how my life went. And I worked very hard and things worked out for me. And including, I planned my whole life. This is a little, the more I meet people in my adult life, the more I find out it's very odd, apparently, that I knew from the time that I was 5 years old that I was going to be a teacher. I don't know if I just thought that was cool and I said, that's it, and I'm going to work towards that and didn't think about anything else. But I just knew my whole life I was going to be a teacher. And God love all of my zillion brothers that would sit in our basement, in my dad's workshop, nonetheless, in the back of this basement, where I would make them sit in these little chairs and I would teach them things with this goofy chalkboard that we had on the back of the door. I just had done that forever. And I planned my whole life. I went to the school I'm in Philly, and the school that you go to be a teacher back then, a zillion years ago, that's where I went. So I came out of college, I worked for it. I had the big wedding, the McMansion homes had just come on the scene back in the year 2000. I got the degree, landed the job. I checked every single box. But I'll tell you this, I had planned my whole life to be a teacher, wife, everything, and live this amazing life. But I had dreamt about being a mom. That was my number one. I mean, I would sit and think about, I think because I have the most extraordinary role model in my mom, my grandmother, like I had some incredible women around me. So I couldn't wait to be a mom. And then there I was in the year 2000 when everybody was that whole Y2K thing, that New Year's Eve, when everyone thought the whole world was going to shut down, my belly was as big can be. I was 9 months pregnant. And if you have carried a baby, or if you are close with someone that has carried a baby, you know that as your belly grows, your hopes and dreams for that baby grow, don't they? I mean, I was like, I was thinking about, I didn't know if it was my first child, so I did the whole surprise thing, right? I don't know if anybody does that anymore. Everybody knows before the baby gets there, but I didn't know. So I would sit there. I remember sitting there on New Year's Eve, and my belly was so big, and I was envisioning like a boy or a girl, and long black hair, or what sports they were going to play, and if I was going to have the soccer goalie or the football quarterback. Like my dreams were just growing and growing. And then on January 29th, in the year 2000, I became a mom. And it was the greatest thing. And those of you that, it's like your first, second, however many kids you have that day that you're a mom first or you're a mom again, it's just, for me, it's the greatest thing in the world. And I remember being home with I was holding Michael, my firstborn, and I looked around and I thought, everything I ever wanted has come true. Everything. I mean, I was so blessed that everything I ever wanted came true. And I would dress him up in, like, we were living in Chicago at the time, but I'm a Philly girl through and through. I would dress him up in little Eagles outfits and Phillies outfits, and daydream about what franchise he would be playing for. And then at 4 months old, on Memorial Day weekend, I found out in a little exam room at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, a doctor said to me, "Kristen, your son is blind." And at that moment, I think it's kind of crazy now to say it out loud to you all, but Michael was the first blind person I had ever met in my life. I had never known another blind person. So as you can probably imagine, in that moment, I'm not exactly proud of my first question. My first question was, is he going to play baseball? Okay, who says that? I don't know, but that was me. I said, is he going to play baseball? And the doctor was like, no. And I was like, I think my thing was, how blind is he, right? Because I didn't know that he was blind. And I said, you're thinking it's a boy, right? So what are boys' things? And I'm thinking, like, all these things had raced through my mind, like, oh my God, driving, baseball, prom, wedding. Like, I was going through all my checklists, which one of these is he ever going to be able to do? And it was no, I don't think so. I don't know. No. That's what I got that day. And I actually, not only did all my dreams crash to the floor, I physically crashed to the floor. Because the thing that I know now is I had all these massive dreams for him, and I make the plans, I do the work, and it comes to fruition. So this was against all of my grain, right? And all of my lists. And those of you that I don't know if that book still exists, the What to Expect When You're Expecting, I memorized that. I memorized that book for 9 months. And I was now looking for nobody was handing me the book that said what to expect when you weren't expecting blindness, right? Nobody handed me anything. All I got that day was, I don't know what to tell you, Kristen. Good luck. I was angry about that for a long time, but I will give that doctor a ton of grace, because you guys have to remember that was 20 years ago. There really was nothing happening. There wasn't the resources and stuff that there is now. The fact that sentence still happens is why I'm fueled every single day to only sleep 4 hours until we make a huge turnaround in this work, in this field. However, that was 20 years ago. There really was nothing. So if you, my TED Talk was mentioned, I'm going to skip over a lot of this to get to some of the other pieces. And I encourage you to go watch my TED Talk, and you can see my heart-wrenching moments of this journey with getting that diagnosis and being told good luck, and why I do the work that I do. But I will also say, I'm not proud to say it out loud, but I do, because I know from talking with thousands of parents that are raising blind and visually impaired children, and even thousands more raising children with rare diseases. I am not exactly proud, but I sat on my couch and sobbed for a very long time, because I had no resources of what was possible. And you also have to remember, give me a little bit of space and grace here, that there was no Facebook, no Twitter, no Instagram, no nothing. There wasn't all of these ways to access people and information. I mean, I don't even think Google. Can you imagine there was a world with no Google? It wasn't even here yet. So I had no lifeline to find out. There was one little listserv for LCA families, but that listserv, and if you were in the field of giving resources to any community, I want you to hear this. That listserv was all messages of moms like me. This is awful. This is devastating. I can't do this. And then it was messages about Braille and white canes, and I couldn't even stomach those words yet, right? So there was just no place for me to go. Now, I often say, if you can imagine, I didn't want to use all of my slides because I want you to, those of you that are not blind and visually impaired, I'd like for you to live in that space for a few minutes here with me. And I want you to envision a boat, like a canoe, out on the water on gorgeous, still water with a sunset happening. And if you can think of the colors of the sunset, the oranges, the yellows, the water seems to be getting darker as the sun is going down, and there's a little family in that kayak. And I always say that my son's diagnosis day, that was me. That was my little family, my perfect life, my perfect family was put out in that boat on the water. Nowhere in sight was there land to go to. Darkness was literally coming. And I had no roadmap, I had no resource, I had no other boat that was coming out to save me. That was my diagnosis day. That's the diagnosis day of thousands of other families for all this time, and still happening today. Now, for a long time, I've said to people, don't be in that boat. Don't get in that boat. Like, you got to turn around and go back to the beach. Don't be in that boat. I'm actually happy that I've had years to have sat those 3 years on my couch sobbing. Not that that was a great thing, but it gave me time to think. And I would do I was happy by day with my Michael, and then sitting on the couch crying at night, trying to envision a life that I just couldn't picture for him, right? But it did give me time to think of what life did I want him to have, and how could we possibly get there? And it was excruciating for all those years to try to figure, how was I going to get there when I had no roadmap, I had no role model, I had nothing to get there. But I realize now that in that time, I started to open my eyes and my heart in hope to look for that somewhere and find it somewhere. And if you've seen my TED Talk, you know that I struggled with whether to, in LCA, especially in CRB1 LCA, that my kids have, there's a 25% chance of every pregnancy being affected, right? So I had 3 years. I intended to have a big old family like I come from, with a circus going on all the time, right? That's what I just figured was family. Complete chaos at all times, good times. And, for 3 years, it got really hard that I thought, how am I going to have an only child? Because everybody that I talked to, specialists, were saying, oh yeah, you don't have a second one when you have a first one, because the 25% is such a huge, huge risk, right? So me being I always say the relentless optimist, I'm like, 75% seems pretty big. I mean, my life worked out until this little blip, right? And to be perfectly honest, it wasn't necessarily that I wanted a huge family, which I did. I was thinking about having a second child because all of my fears revolved around isolation. I am a people person, like I am just around people all the time. And all I kept envisioning for Michael was that he was going to be by himself, like sitting on the school bus by himself, navigating a school by himself. Like I didn't know what was possible for his life. And I knew that I was uncomfortable with blindness. I think blindness is still the second most feared thing next to death or public speaking. I think they're up there together. So I was envisioning that there was going to be no place for him in a community, in a school. I just kept feeling loneliness in his life at that point. So what is a real special mom do? She thinks, a sibling would fix all that, right? He'd be guaranteed one friend. Okay, remember, this was 20 years ago. I'm a different person now. I was very young and had no clue, right? But those were the thoughts that went through my mind. So I'm also like this neurotically. I don't know if it's because I'm a teacher or I need answers or the Virgo thing or Catholic. I don't know what it is, but I have to have answers. I have to research things. I need to know everyone's opinion and then come to my own. So I talked to zillions of people about being an only child, because I didn't know how to do that either. Like, how am I going to raise an only child? What do they do? I did all this research. I had my feelings about loneliness and blindness. And then I decided, you know what? 75% is a huge possibility and optimism, right? I think we're going to go for it. And there's no way. What are the chances? What are the chances that a second child would be blind, right? There's no God in this heaven. No, my God wouldn't do that. No way would that happen. So I was blissfully awaiting my second child's arrival. And then all of a sudden one morning, I woke up to, oh my God, 25% is like a huge percentage. I have a huge risk here. And it was around Easter time. I was about 7 months pregnant now. And I thought, oh my God. And you can see on my TED Talk, I went into this tantrum that I am not proud of at all in a quote prayer. It was a tantrum. It was like a 2-year-old's tantrum in a 32-year-old's body. And I went a little ballistic on God, like, you can't possibly do this. I can't handle it. And then my miracle morning, my most famous moment of my life that I've talked about all over the world, my Michael came bouncing into my bedroom where I was that morning when I couldn't even get out of bed. I was so crippled in fear of that 25% chance. And Michael came in, and his big line to me was, and he was only 3 years old, this little tiny thing with these little circle glasses. And he said to me, "Mommy, isn't this the best day ever?" And I thought, I am scared for this kid like he can't even imagine. But blindness wasn't bothering him. In that split second of this little tiny person saying to me, "This is the best day ever," I thought, oh my God, he did everything he wanted. He did every single thing that a 3-year-old Michael wanted to do. He figured everything out. So much so that the preschool called me and said they didn't think he was really blind and something was wrong with me. Like, he just figured everything out. And he was, I always say he couldn't see what was happening, but he could feel and taste and smell, and he did everything but see. And I actually have seen that to be, and I saw it in that moment too, to be even more extraordinary than some of the things we're able to just see. He gets to experience it with everything else that I don't necessarily pay attention to myself. So in that moment, I thought, I had been literally praying blindness away for 3 years. And I had been praying for the phone call for a cure. And I know now in that moment, my prayer was answered. I had been praying for blindness to be cured, but Michael's blindness wasn't cured. My blindness as his mom was cured. I was so blind to the fact that he was destined for greatness. Like, you look at that little baby and you go, oh my God, what great things are you going to do? I knew he was destined for greatness, and I thought blindness was in the way of that. And it wasn't. It wasn't. He was figuring out. I was completely in his way. You know why? Because I had early intervention specialists coming to the house. I was more so using them as my therapist than having them really break down the skills and tools that my Michael was going to need. I didn't want them to say things like Braille. I didn't want to hear about the white cane. I wanted to hear about how he had more vision as an LCA kid than the kid with retinopathy of prematurity that they just saw that morning, right? I wanted all of those little wins instead of the big win, my kid getting the tools and resources that he needed. So that moment of mommy, isn't this the best day ever, completely, when I tell you on a dime, flipped my perception of blindness, that it was not the big problem I was making it out to be for Michael. I had to fix myself, right? So I would like to say that then I was just skipping in the rose bushes and everything went wonderful from there, but I was crippled a second time because I was like, whoa, okay, I get it. You know, blind is his thing. He's fine with it, but how am I supposed to get him everything he needs when I don't even know what that is or where to start? And that's when my journey really changed, because that's when my prayer became, okay, send me, keep my eyes open to all the people and the tools and the resources, no matter my opinions of them, keep my eyes open to look for them and get them for my kids. And you know what's interesting? I realized that all of that stuff had been sent to me for 3 years, and I didn't have the, as I say, the hopeful eyes looking for the solutions and the possibility. I was looking for a different path to be on instead of the one I was supposed to be on. For example, when the doctor said to me, I don't know what to tell you, good luck, he also said to me, I don't know if you want to check out this one doctor in the world that might know something to tell you about LCA. And that was Dr. Irene Malmany, who's one of the greatest people on the planet. And I could do a whole speech on her. But she happened to be in Baltimore at the time. She is now at Columbia and has gone by way of UIC in Chicago. But she was in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins at Wilmer. And he said, if anyone could maybe give you some more information, Irene can do it. So I went right down 95 from Philly to Irene Malmany in Baltimore. And here's the thing. No, there wasn't a lot of information on LCA. There was no cure to give me. There was none of that. But Irene is not the kind of person that isn't, if there's no answer in terms of research and a scientific answer, she's going to find you answers to still not necessarily solve the problem, but to help and connect. She's a connector because she knows everybody. So that one conversation with Irene, she introduces me to the Brint family, who had been running the LCA Family Foundation. I forget what the name of it was, but we called it the LCA Family Foundation. Long story short, I end up at a conference when Michael was maybe 2 for LCA families, and I started to see the Pat Leahy, who's now on Capitol Hill, very successful, this blind 20-something with LCA, successfully standing up there reading Braille and talking about his journey with blindness. I meet his mom, who gave me some incredible information about raising blind children. All of that had been happening. I just wasn't utilizing any of that to make my journey and Michael's journey better. I was still focused in this one area that I wanted the path different, right? So that day when that miracle morning of isn't this the best day ever changed my whole perception, which if you look back on my entire journey was the tipping point to start a trajectory that my boys and I have a sighted daughter also, have never, we've had little blips that might come down a little bit, but we've continued on this trajectory that no one could have ever planned. And I also say, none of my plans for my boys came to fruition. And I couldn't be happier about that, because I think you all may be able to agree that God can write a much better story and a much better plan than any of us can, right? All of these things that happen with them are nothing short of miraculous, that I was able to back up and let them live their dreams. Now, I've come to put a word to this. We all talk about resilience now, right? In this I keep calling it a stupid pandemic. I have no other adjective that is appropriate to say in any Zoom room other than stupid pandemic. That's what I figure that this is. And everyone is having hopes and dreams crushed or put on hold and all of that. So we're all talking about resilience, right? I say the goal is what I uncovered in my journey is that I've been blessed to be brilliantly resilient. And it's funny, my first role model in blindness was my son, Michael. And my first role model in brilliantly resilient are both of my boys. Because when I found out that my Mitchell was also blind from CRB1 LCA, I had my built-in role model with Michael, and I was able to get over that in just a few weeks, not a few years, and take my boys by the hand and let them live their extraordinary lives. But I've noticed, and if you think about, if you know folks that are succeeding without sight, they are the picture of resilience. And we can learn a ton from people like my Michael and Mitchell. They have had to figure stuff out since birth, and they do it. It's a normal part of their DNA. They have confidence, independence, like all of these traits. They are incredible at teamwork. They've been managing their IEP teams in the schools for years. They've just been resilient as part of it. I guess it's like part of their personality. They have to keep bouncing back and figuring out new ways to do things. So now I do a lot in the field of resilience, because that's what my life has been. So interestingly enough, along the lines of resilience, here I am raising these blind kids to thrive. I didn't want to just raise them to survive blindness. Like they are born for great things. So I wanted them to thrive. So I, spent all these years getting them tools and resources, and my communication with them has always been, you are not broken. Like, I don't like that kind of language in our field of fixing blindness, right? We're not fixing blindness. We are changing journeys. Perhaps we are giving an option for a different path, right? But we're not fixing something. So my boys always knew that there was nothing to fix about them. And then along comes a little project with RPE 65 here in Philly. And I found that out around 2009. And by 2011, Facebook had come on the scene by then. I meet all these other moms with the same blindness my kids have. And with 10 families, we decided to start what was supposed to be a little gene therapy project. Thanks so much to Eric Pierce, that's now up at Mass Eye and Ear, and Jean Bennett, with gene therapy, that said, why don't you can start a little gene therapy project and see where it goes, study CRB1. And then I had the interesting dilemma of, how do I talk to my boys about reversing something that I said was never a problem in the first place, right? My boys are of the opinion that, and this is what has carried my work to where it is now. And this is the biggest message I think that I want a lot of you to take home from this. In my boys' opinion, both of them being almost completely blind from CRB1 LCA, living the lives of their dreams, their opinion is an option for sight is what they want. My boys have said to me, it is phenomenal to dedicate your life to having an option for sight. That's what we want, but we might not necessarily take it. A couple of years ago, my Michael was in high school and getting ready to go to college. He's at Penn State now. And his thing was, it would hold him back, in his opinion, to be in college and to have a treatment right now. If he were to be able to reverse and have vision right now, he thinks that would slow him down, because he'd have to learn to read print. He'd have to learn things all over again. So he just wants to do college. And when college is over, then if there's an option, that would be great. And then Mitch was of a different opinion, because there's certain things that Mitchell would like to do that require vision, right? But their point is, an option is pretty much what they deserve. And all people, whatever condition you have, deserve the option, right, to reverse that condition. But I think what's a hard thing for all of us dedicating our lives to this is, I have worked so hard to get my kids all the tools and resources that they need to succeed without sight. They are very well equipped. It is a hard decision to switch to a whole new world of sight. And I've watched them flip-flop on that depending on the bubble, like the bubble of elementary school. It was hard to leave that bubble and go into middle school, and then they found challenges there, right? Hence the resilience thing that they're always going back and forth with. But I think it's important to remember that it's our job to empower the blind and visually impaired community with all the tools and resources they need, and provide options for vision restoration. And then it's up to them to take it or leave it. And my goal in all of my work that you see behind me with my Curing Retinal Blindness Foundation and the Thriving Blind, that's now Thriving Blind Academy, my goal is to make that the hardest decision of a patient's life. Do I really want to leave one world for the other because I'm so comfortable in the one world? I want them making decisions out of full education and not desperation. Because I've been that desperate person 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I was still working in desperation and not fully in education and fully accepting where my boys are and what their goals and their dreams are. So I say all of that, and I also should say that I have an incredible team, blessed with an incredible amount of grit with the Curing Retinal Blindness Foundation, that they have all of my team has adopted the same philosophy. And I should also mention that on my team with the Curing Retinal Blindness Foundation, I am the only one on the board that has LCA CRB1. Everybody else has RP CRB1. It's a much later onset. So they're raising children that don't really have a problem with their vision until about 10, 11, 12 years old. They're getting devastated in a whole different way than I am. However, we all have adopted this philosophy over the past few years that it is our role to fund and push and connect people together to make options available for vision restoration. And it's also our daily job to advocate, nag. I'm just going to use the word nag because nagging can be very powerful. Nag and push and scream and yell for these kids to have every tool and resource that they need to live a full, successful life without sight, should that be their choice. And this team is absolutely unbelievable that they've come together with that philosophy and have literally move mountains. I mean, like I said in the beginning, if I can do this, anybody can do this. I started as an elementary school teacher, walked away from my lifelong dream of that to sit on my couch and cry for 3 years over a blindness diagnosis, get hit twice by that, have no idea what I was going to do. And then I'm standing on the floor of Congress, submitting the first ever legislation in United States history in Braille, advocating for better resources for the blind and visually impaired. What? Then a year later, I'm at the FDA, one of 12 people in the world invited to testify on behalf of what was already mentioned, Sparks Luxturna, to reverse vision loss. Who does that? Who does that? A person with an incredible team and an incredible dedication to the mission and unbelievable people in this field. I should also say that if you're watching this and you're not in the field of inherited retinal disease, you might want to switch fields because this field is absolutely extraordinary with the way that people collaborate and come together and literally move mountains, like I said. But I mean, our team has now gone on to raise, I think we're at $1.4 million. We set out long ago to say, and this is another point for those of you that are working in this field or other fields and your team is trying to achieve big goals, you might want to scale it back. We decided we are not the $40 million, raise all the money for the clinical trial. We found our little lane. Our lane is let's find the people that can do that and let's get them the research, the basic research going for CRB1. Let's find out the questions that they still have for this rare disease, get those answered, and then we turn it over to our partnerships and collaborations and friends in the field to do all that. So I get so excited about this work, I get off on tangents, but let me bring this home so that you can get to the next part of the program. If you've ever heard of, or if you've never heard of, Eric Weihenmayer, who's the first blind man to have summited Mount Everest, and he's gone on to do all 7 summits. I highly encourage you to get his book, Touch the Top of the World. He's had several books, but that was the one that made the most impact in my life. My son, Michael, met Eric when Michael was 6 years old. And that was a piece that changed the trajectory of Michael's life, because at 6 years old, he met somebody that was just like him, that did something that no sighted person, Michael still has yet to meet a sighted person in his vast network that has ever climbed Mount Everest. You know, he's like, a blind guy did that. Sighted people don't do that. Like, don't ever tell me that there's limits on my life, right? Not that everybody can meet an Eric Wyomere, right? But I encourage you to find the people that are doing the things you want to do, and especially for your kids, connect your kids to people that are like them and doing things that are impressive and open their minds to the possibility for them, right? I mean, I believe so big in role models that's what Thriving Blind, the book is. It's all the blind role models succeeding without sight that we have met. And I'll give you one more role model that you have to look up, and then I'm going to land the plane here. David Feigenbaum is in the rare disease community. He like literally cured his own rare disease, Castleman disease. He is now using a lot of the stuff he learned with that disease to take a look at COVID-19. He was like featured on CNN's Person of the Week or whatever a couple Saturdays ago. But his book is called Chasing My Cure. And in that, it talks about these 5 key things of resilience. And you'll, if you get that book, you'll hear a lot of the stuff I've been talking about echoed in that. But he's a phenomenal person to follow. And he says one of his biggest takeaways for me is, if you cannot find, I was one of those, I told you I'm a relentless optimist, right? I always can find the silver lining. And then when I couldn't, with blindness, with starting a foundation that I had no business starting in vision research, all of these things, when I can't find the silver lining, that's what keeps me in the pit that I cannot bounce back from. And David Feigenbaum says, no. If you can't find a silver lining, create the silver lining. That's a magic bullet in achieving dreams and being brilliantly resilient, and whatnot. And I'm loving the people that are in this room and the work, especially that's done at Moms for Sight, because you all are creating the silver lining that so many people are looking for and doesn't exist yet. And I know that it can be frustrating work. I know that it's rewarding, but at the same time, it can be exhausting and frustrating, but you're creating the silver lining that so many of us need. And I appreciate that. And I encourage everybody in your own life to figure out, when you get stuck, where can you create the silver lining? And then I'll just bring you back to that picture that I had you create in your mind of that boat on the water where the sun was going down. My dream now, and I actually stood at my dream vision in Vancouver at the ARVO conference, when the ARVO conference was there, or meeting was there 2 years ago. My vision now, what I want us all to come together and create, is this gorgeous sunlit harbor with the boats representing all the tools and resources that a blind or visually impaired person needs on their entire journey. Because as we know, the tools and resources change across the journey. And in the background of the Vancouver harbor is this giant mountain. And my friend Kathy Nimmer, who was Teacher of the Year in Indiana a couple of years ago, and she was top 4 in the country, who's totally blind, says all of our kids are going to get to the top of the mountain, blind kids included. But for blind kids, it might look a little different. The path to get there is going to look a little bit different, but they deserve to get to the top of the mountain. And all of those boats in the harbor are the resources for them to get to the top of their mountain, not ours. And I want you to think about what your role is in building that harbor and filling it with all of these boats and resources for these blind and visually impaired kids that deserve to get to the top of that mountain. What role can you play? Are you the doctor that's giving the diagnosis that says, I know this is devastating, but I have these resources for you to turn to? Are you in a lab coming up with the next gene therapy or figuring out CRISPR to reverse vision loss? Are you somebody that isn't connected to that at all, but you've got connections to finances that can help work to build that harbor? What is your role in building that? And then how can we all come together and utilize our roles to make that harbor big, beautiful, and effective? But thank you so much. Oh, I got the award here. Thank you for mailing it to me. Thank you so much for this. I mean, the fact that I went from having no vision for my boys' lives to being called the Visionary Award in 20 years, I mean, that's the best of the best, and I'm so grateful. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That was awesome. As a mom going through very similar things, I feel like I've felt all of your pain and all of your success stories, everything. And I'm pretty sure my son Brendan's school can tell you that I was one of the biggest nags they've met in their careers. So I understand completely. And I know there are a lot of moms on here, and I've seen some of the names, and some of them have very young children and newly diagnosed. So the message that you send is extremely important for them. So thank you very, very much.
Oh, thanks. And all the moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas can reach out to me, and I'll hold your hand and load you up with resources. You'll be sick of me.
Great, thank you. And we're recording this too. Are we okay if we post this somewhere so people who missed the conference can go watch it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
of course.
Great. Okay, thank you again. So next up we have Susie for a quick closing and a message of hope, and then Brendan's going to come on to talk to you guys about how to start the silent auction. The silent auction's actually started in the background, so I think people are still bidding, which is great, but being able to watch the instructions are kind of important because we've never done a silent auction online, so hopefully it works okay. But Susie, it's on you. And again, thank you, Kristen. That was awesome.
Yes, thank you. Well, our annual Black Ties and Blindfold event has definitely been different this year, to say the least. But one thing we'd like to accomplish is to incorporate a portion of our event through the eyes of our loved ones who can only listen to us today. So for those who have attended our events in the past, we distribute blindfolds and ask that they be worn during a portion of our presentation. Well, guess what? We're going to do that virtually now while I share some thoughts. Just give me a moment. Brendan, can you share my screen? Here we go.
You have to do that yourself.
I got it. It wasn't working, but I got it, I think. There we go. Our goal has been accomplished by showcasing our sense of community, love, and hope. Generosity and support are most definitely tangible, and we thank you for joining us today. I'd like to challenge each of you to introduce us to one person who does not yet know about Moms for Sight by the time we can hopefully return to live interaction for the 2021 Black Ties and Blindfolds, which is targeted for Mosh on Saturday, April 17th of 2021. Now, it's hard to believe that 12 years have gone by since our founder, Lisa Pleasance, finalized our status as a nonprofit. Tremendous kudos to her. She doesn't like the spotlight at all, but on behalf of all of us, thank you for the dedication and perseverance that you demonstrate, Lisa. You're really a remarkable woman and fellow mom. I'm so proud to affectionately call you mine as the foundation fighting blindness. Other moms and affected children bond in a way only they can understand. It really pulls their heartstrings. Elisa, speaking of children, your son Brendan. Brendan, you're already something special because of having such a great mom. I've watched you grow from a somewhat timid boy to this strapping young overachiever,
support you in return and give you the gift of recovered sight that we all pray will be a reality someday. I wish to send a message to my son, brother, and cousin that you're all successful, incredible men, and I will continue to fight this fight for you. Please stay strong, stay positive, and never lose hope. We wish to express our thanks to someone we could not do what we do without. He's our very special connection to the science side of our Moms for Sight mission. Thank you, Dr. G. Well, I guess not Professor G. Words, thank you, will never be enough to depict our sentiment. You are so loved by all of us, and we truly appreciate your unique way of articulating extremely complex science by using analogies, putting things into layman's terms. You changed every single life you touched. Seriously. Thank you, and congratulations to you, Miss Medley. Wow, I mean, you are such an amazing woman and such an inspiration and most appropriate and deserving recipient of the Moms for Sight 2020 Visionary Award. Your story can quickly help most of us put things into perspective and change a mindset to I can. Your story is exponentially impactful to our Moms for Sight mission. It's just simply remarkable what you've overcome by being open-minded and letting go of what you felt were predetermined outcomes. And I can't wait to continue to share your story with others. You really are the epitome of a mom for sight, and you exude hope. We wish to express our gratitude and thanks to our sponsors, AGTC, Janssen Pharmaceuticals, Johnson & Johnson, and Exit Inspired Real Estate. Hope is the special gift we receive from your support. Our ability to continue to expand our exposure and our collective mission to our community will, even beyond that, is in great part from your support. Some of you are supporting us financially as well as through your outstanding research efforts. Thank you so much. You know, although the fight we fight is not one of a life-ending disease, it is a fight for millions of people who live with the life-altering effects of vision loss and a real fear of one day waking to darkness. There are many in our extended family who unfortunately have already discovered that new reality. So we hope we can continue to provide awareness, education, and support so they can continue to live with hope. Cures for retinal degenerative diseases. They were once considered Buck Rogers or never going to happen in our lifetime. Well, those are now in human trials across the globe. The only way these trials can be funded and cures to become a reality are for the support they count on to continue to happen. Our message this year is focused on more of a outreach, progress, and expanding our mission to our community so we can spread hope and have that continue to grow. Lastly, I'd like to share some of these thoughts by a few of our extended family who wish to be heard. They are united in their message. Thank you for being here.
San Augustine, Florida, and I'm affected by choroideremia. Thanks to your support, I live with hope.
Jacksonville, Florida, my son has X-linked juvenile retinoschisis, and because of your support, we have them.
I live in San Augustine, Florida. My aunt, mom, and I are all caring leukemia. My son, brother, and cousin are currently affected. Thanks to your support, our family lives with hope. My name is Adrian and I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I have Stargardt disease and thanks to your support, I live with hope. I live in Palm Beach, Florida, and I have colorectal dystrophy. Thanks to your support, I live in hope.
Steve and I live in Camarillo, California. I was born with choroideremia, and your support helps fund my hope. Thank you for your help.
Hello, everyone. My name is April Lufreyu. I'm a former Mrs. America and Mrs. World, an advocate for the blind and visually impaired. As a mother with 2 children with retinitis pigmentosa, I want to thank you for your support. Because of your support, I live with hope.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Susie. That definitely tested the fact that we had to listen very closely because we couldn't see anything. Obviously, the screen was black, and then sometimes the voice was going in and out, so we had to get real close and turn the volume up. So we might want to fix that.
Okay.
But I think we all got the message and really appreciate it. And those people at the end were awesome too. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Brendan. So officially, this ends the conference portion, and I know that we went over. I appreciate everyone's patience. If we do this again, hopefully we will. We'll know that the timing should be a little different. Brendan's going to talk to you about the silent auction portion. Now that's going to have most items from or near the Jacksonville area. So if you're not from Jacksonville, you may not be interested unless you're planning on coming down to visit. There are a couple things on there that might be good too. But that's going to start in a minute. Brendan's going to show people how to bid if it's at all confusing. But thank you all for joining us and have a great rest of your weekend. Brendan, go ahead.
Hey everybody, so real quick, I'm gonna play the video that I've posted on the Moms for Sight page.
Hi, I'm Jim List, Global Head of the Cardiovascular Metabolism and Retina team at Janssen.
Yeah, so I'm gonna play the video that I made with the instructions on how to do the silent auction. If for some reason you don't get the video here, you can watch it again, and if you have any other questions, my mom and I are gonna post our phone numbers on the website somewhere, and you can text us and we'll try to answer your questions as best as we can. But here's the video. Hello everyone, welcome to 2020 Black Ties and Blindfolds, hosted by Moms for Sight. Today I'm going to show you how to bid on our virtual silent auction items. First, go to momsforsight.org and click on the menu button. Then click on 2020 Black Ties and Blindfolds. Once you're on the Black Ties and Blindfolds page, you can scroll down and view the items that you can bid on. Now you want to click this link right here. Once you're on the spreadsheet, click the menu button in the bottom left. Then find the item that you want to bid on and click on it. Then, in the leftmost column, you will see the bid to beat. This is the number you will have to bid more than. Keep in mind that every item has its own minimum bid increment. Once you've figured out how much you want to bid on the item, go back to the auction page and click the bid button on the item you want to bid on. This will take you to a Google form. Fill out the Google form. If you haven't bid on the item before, click that corresponding button, and if you have, click that corresponding button. If you haven't bid on the item, it will ask you to fill out some contact information, and if you have, you won't have. If the bid to beat is $25 and the minimum bid increment is $5, then you must bid $30 if you want to have a chance to win the auction. Once the auction is started, you will have 24 hours to bid on the items. Once the 24 hours is up, we will close all of the bid forms and tally up who the winners are and contact them with the contact information provided on the bid form. Thanks again for coming to the silent auction, and happy bidding.
Thanks, Brendan, and thanks everybody again for joining us. And if you win anything, we'll be in touch soon. And otherwise, we'll have this posted and we'll let you know where it's posted. So if you need to watch it again or share it with somebody who's interested, you can do that. Thank you.